What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined as always by the trusted co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing, man?
Call me Bronco Henry. Let's ride.
I have some questions about Bronco Henry. How much of a real man he was. I heard a lot about it though. We're looking forward to talking about the power of the dog. It seems like sure to be awards, at least contender this upcoming movie award season, I should say. But we're gonna be talking about at least a couple of music projects. We're gonna be talking about some TV slash movie slash however you want to characterize the Beatles Get Back, as well as some things that Dave got to that I did not get to this week. So if you want to hear it all and get it all immediately, hit that subscribe button on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. And you can follow the podcast any other way you want, as well as on Twitter at nostalgiapod. But Dave, we start with someone that we've been anticipating hearing more from, Tierra Whack, who I think has been probably the person we've wanted, an artist we've wanted to hear more from for the last going on 3 years now after Whack World. I guess I'll label it experimental rap album just because of the structure of it. Not and obviously Tierra Whack I think has gained a reputation for being an out of the box rapper, not traditional in many senses. But since then we've only gotten a few singles, few features here and there, but no real projects until Rap came out this past week, 3-song EP, and I don't know how I feel about this. I guess what was just like your initial response seeing that the EP dropped, listening to it, and where are you at now with it?
Yeah, I should note the Whack World, Tierra Whack's Whack World actually was 2018, so it's getting closer to 4 years since that came out.
Damn.
But she's been loosely, I guess, feeding the streets with a number of freestyles and one-off singles since then. And this rap EP kind of reminded me of a lot of those songs. Nothing catches your eye the way the construction of Whack World did. And when I finished the rap EP, I was like, all right, that's okay. Nice to see that she packaged something up as an official release again, but still kind of leaves me wanting more. Then realizing later today, she announced a forthcoming EP called Pop as a companion piece. Who knows if there's more to come as well. But clearly there's some intentionality behind a lot of this that we didn't quite get as much with those other loose songs, right? I feel like if anything, like apart from that one loose song, Only Child, which I do like quite a bit, the biggest rap moment for her, I think, recently was that feature on Little Boat 3, Lil Yachty's song, on her song with, I believe that was what song with Rocky and Tyler. I think that was a kind of out of nowhere. She's had some cool features, but yeah, I mean, these 3 songs, I think they're fine. I think if you run through the track listing, they get better as you go. These 3 songs, Stand Up, Megan Good, and Millions. I think I like Millions the most.
Yeah, I
But
do too.
it's it's just some music from her, to be honest.
Yeah, when you think about Whack World, what she was rapping about, the way she was going about it, the concept just is so unique and out there. And I think hearing something that is more traditional, these songs are not just a minute long. They're 2 minutes 30 seconds, about 3 minutes each, and nothing really popped off to me about these that said like, wow, this is a special track from Tierra Whack. And I think maybe in some ways our expectations of her being someone who's like so disarming and outside the box make us grade her on a different curve than other people because we're looking for her to do things that we haven't heard or that kind of subvert our expectations all the time. I don't think the track's necessarily bad, but they also didn't really have anything that made me say like, I'm gonna go back and play Millions again. I do think some of the production looks sounds cool, like the percussion on Stand Up right from the beginning is like kind of distorted and sounds really awesome. I thought the rapping on Megan Good probably was maybe some of my favorite. Millions, I think, sounded the best just as a whole, but overall, just wanted a little bit more. I'm glad we're gonna get more this upcoming week, but where do you like see her like fitting in like the rap world right now? Like,
Yeah, I mean, she's still signed to Interscope. This is an Interscope release. And in the interim, alongside all these loose songs and occasional guest spots, she's had some unique partnerships with, I believe, Adult Swim and Adobe and stuff. So she's definitely doing what she wants to do and is not feeling that pressure that a lot of modern artists, especially modern rap artists, feel to release very frequently. So that's all good. You can you definitely hope that's on purpose, right? So I like to see where the rest of this rollout goes. Perhaps there's something beyond the pop EP. Remember Kevin Abstract's Arizona Baby rollout started off as a series of EPs. The next thing you know, it's a solo album from him.
true.
Maybe that's where we're headed. Uh, but yeah, I mean, she's not super active, so it's weird to kind of place her, right? She clearly has a lot of respect from her Philly peers, and especially Meek Mill, who had a large part in her coming up. And I guess that feature with Yachty, and also the feature with Willow Smith recently, like that counts for something, I guess. But yeah, she's definitely keeping her cards close to her vest, which is unique for a lot of rappers, especially ones that we are consider ascendant. So
Yeah,
a lot of
I mean,
TBD, I guess.
it's funny because I'd like to like almost say like she's outside the box, but she's really just creating her own box. It seems like she's creating her own lane and doing just whatever feels right for her unique interests. So definitely looking forward to hearing more. We'll be talking about pop next week. Why don't we move forward though to DJ? No, just Khalid. Uh, Khalid is a, I think, an interesting artist to me, right? Because I think the appeal to him is solid vocals, brings like a very like warm, comforting, silky vibe to his songs, and fairly upbeat too. An artist that obviously has popped off with some huge, huge hits. Talk with Disclosure, I think, is the one probably everyone in the world knows. Um, it, I believe it has like hundreds of thousands of streams on Spotify. I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
Um, he's got like songs that have billions of streams. It's
Hmm.
nuts. He's obviously a huge artist. I think for me, when I think about him, and especially as we talk about, we talked about what, American Teen, or was it
No, we
Free
talked about the
Spirit?
second album, Free Spirit. Yeah.
Talk about Free Spirit. I think about him as being an artist that was kind of doing what we saw a lot of artists doing, where they just put out these long projects. Some songs hit, some songs don't, but nothing really popped off from Free Spirit that really blew me away.
Apart from
And
Talk.
right, of course, Talk being the standout. We get to Scenic Drive, a lot shorter, a lot more focused. Was it better? Dave, did you like Scenic Drive more?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Uh, but I actually don't think this is that off brand for Khalid. If you remember, before Free Spirit came out in spring 2019, he also released his Sun City EP in fall 2018. This Scenic Drive tape, as he's calling it, seems to be the prelude for his full length third album coming in 2022, which seems to be titled Everything is Changing. So this is an interstitial project anyway. So you shouldn't have high expectations for it. But it doesn't really sound any different from how Khalid has sounded to this point. And on one hand, that'll lend himself to continued success because he's been very successful at doing what he's doing. However, I have still not been impressed with that. Talk is really great because that's produced by Disclosure, you
Yeah.
know? And Khalid as a guest, in that case, kind of a guest on Disclosure's production, Khalid as a guest, I like a lot more, when he's a featured artist. But on his own song, especially when it's just him, I'm just not wowed by the vocals, and I just think the music is really sanitized and safe. And it's not that it's offensive, but it doesn't really blow you away when you compare it to other kinds of R&B music or pop music. So, again, he'll find some more success with this, I'm sure. He's got 6 Grammy nominations to this point. He's still very young, in his early 20s, but this doesn't change my perception of him.
Yeah, Khalid just uh, on the one hand, he's the type of artist that is so successful. The question really should be, why change anything? You know, like
Yeah.
you can keep cashing those checks, keep cashing in. Absolutely. On the other hand, uh, when you see someone like him, I think he has a really strong voice, especially in a song like "Talk," where he gets. I hear him using a little bit more range. I feel like you can really hear some of that potential, and then it's just kind of like, well, I don't really want to go out that far outside the box. What I'm doing works for me, and that just feels a bit disappointing from what I think I look for from artists. Um, but I also think if he's making something that is obviously speaking to a lot of people, like we said, he has songs that have billions of streams on Spotify. That's quite the accomplishment. I don't know what the driver would be for him to change it up. I agree with your take. Nothing on this really changed my opinion of him much. That kind of just a down the middle R&B singer, and he had some features on here that I thought were interesting when I saw on the track list. I mean, the Alicia Keys one is Alicia Keys talking for like 20 seconds. So like, sure. But um, I thought JID, I liked his feature as just like a change up. Um, I guess Ari Lennox is always kind of nice to hear. I don't know. Nothing really stood out that much to me on this. Did any tracks catch you or stand out?
I'd say, yeah, I mean, again, I'd say not that I liked it too much, but like my favorite songs, the songs I think are the best, would be 2 tracks towards the beginning. Backseat, I really enjoyed as a solo Khalid's song, and then Retrograde, featuring Black and Lucky Day. Really like the production on Retrograde, drums, guitar, nice mix there. Although it is funny to hear Khalid followed up by Black, someone else I'm not super impressed with vocally or creatively. Alas, I think the song actually works pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see a lot of ambition with the music to this point. And like American Teen, which again propelled him to blow up with Location and Young, Dumb and Broke and all that. Like even that stuff, which became so popular, I think like the lyrics clearly resonated with his peers, with Gen Z, but like never was impressed with those songs, And does he like with his third album? I guess we're just gonna get more of the same because kind of since then, he's kind of just been a pop guy, right? He's done a lot of these features, right? Like the Normani song, right? Like he's playing the industry game. He's just being that dude, the Benny Blanco Halsey track, right? He's got a lot of these singles,
Right.
but creatively, I just say I have yet to see it. And Talk was nominated for Record of the Year. Again, I give Disclosure a lot of credit for that. I'm sure he'll catch some awards buzz again because clearly he has a lot of people's ear, but he doesn't really have mine.
Yeah. I think out of all the tracks, probably the one that I liked the most was Scenic Drive with Ari Lennox and Smino. Just
Mm.
hearing it go from his like, it's not even really gravelly, but more so like toned down, almost like lurching out of his mouth kind of singing style to like Ari Lennox being so like crisp and clear. Then back to like Smino, who's kind of like has like a bit of a like mumble to him
Yeah,
at
nasal.
times. Yeah, but then also having him and Ari, um, harmonizing around the chorus, I thought was interesting and sounded nice. So I don't know if it's necessarily bad tracks, just like not interesting. And yeah, I think there's probably better things ahead for him, or hopefully. But
Yeah, you'd hope.
uh, Khalid, well, check out our Nostalgia Best of 2021 on Spotify. We'll be probably throwing a track on there from Tierra Whack and maybe Khalid. But Dave, you you knew the assignment. I didn't know the assignment. I forgot to watch Landscapers, which I'm actually really bummed about because I was looking forward all weekend to getting some Olivia Colman and David Thewlis on my television, and I just forgot. I got caught up watching the Patriots spank the Bills last night. So, anyways, give me a quick recap and your thoughts around the first episode of Landscapers.
Yeah, so Landscapers is a HBO British co-production with Sky, 4-episode miniseries premiering on HBO in the States on Monday nights. And stars, as you mentioned, Olivia Colman and David Thewlis, and they play a real-life couple from England who committed a crime. And this is kind of a true crime dramatization type miniseries. And you have two central lead performers in Thewlis and Colman that we like quite a bit, especially Colman, who's just on an incredible acting run, which, by all indications, is continuing with the Lost Daughter, Maggie Gyllenhaal's film, which is coming out at the end of this month. So Olivia Colman in anything requires viewing, and Landscapers, it has a bit of a comedic element to it, but ultimately, I think of it a lot the way, if you recall, we watched the show on AMC called Quiz. Remember that 4-episode miniseries about a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, famous fraud, again, in England. Very similar thing where there's a dramatic event from real life dramatized in a series, but not super long series. But at the end of the day, there's not like a ton of meat on that bone in terms of the crime that it might it'll probably fizzle out in over 4 hours. I think that's where Landscapers is heading, because ultimately it's a simple crime. They murdered Coleman's character's parents and buried them in the back garden and then pretended they were still alive and collected their vengeance. However, by the conclusion of episode 1, the crime has been discovered due to Thewlis's character mentioning it to his stepmom, and they turn themselves over to the police. So effectively, we've progressed through so much plot already that I don't know if the subsequent 3 hours are gonna show us too much more. A big part of this episode, you have Coleman's character kind of daydreaming in the sense about famous actor Gary Cooper, who she likes to buy film memorabilia early on in the film, and like there's these like black and white like dream sequences or daydreams in a sense that seem to interstitch with our scenes here. And I don't know if it really announced to enough through one episode. It just felt like a little bit of padding where I just don't know if there's quite enough there for a 4-episode series. And again, 4 episodes doesn't sound like a lot, but it's kind of an A to B thing. And we got a little bit of this in the first episode, and the review suggests this is going to continue, where we see fourth wall breaking, similar to how scenes from a marriage would show us the sets before the episode technically started, right? We'd watch Chastain and Oscar Isaac walk to the set around people in masks that are the crew in real life, right? We get a little bit of that again with Landscapers. And again, I don't really understand the choice, but I'm beyond the padding. So, I mean, if you're interested in the story, if you want to see these performers, go ahead, at least watch the first episode. But I don't think it's going to crack the year-end list. Not that it's like bad or anything. It's not, there's not a whole lot to it ultimately, I don't think.
Yeah, just in the little bit I had looked into it, I was interested, obviously because of the performers. But in hearing you talk about it, I do wonder because I believe that this is supposed to take place over years, that they cash in the pension. If there will be like some going back in the story, maybe like
Right.
flashbacks, things like that filling in. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go with it. It's only 4 episodes, like you mentioned, so they'll be wrapping up right around like the end of the year, which is not a time we usually get to review too many things. I don't know if we'll be coming back to it, but if it's noteworthy, we will certainly make the space for it. Um, any other thoughts on this? Are you ready to move on to our guy, Peter Jackson, back in the saddle, baby? I think he actually has been working on creating documentaries and like in color images from World War One. I believe was like his projects before this. I at least
Yeah,
remember seeing a lot of.
Those Who Will Not Grow Old was that last
Yes.
documentary. Yes, I never saw it, but I saw the trailer several times
Yeah,
around that time. But and the trailer looked cool, it's
it
like
did.
in color. It's like, oh wow, look at that, looks so real.
Yeah, it
Uh,
did, man.
and then that's what Peter Jackson's been up to. He's been in doc mode. And
Ah,
he's also hella rich now. By the way, he sold the digital effects studio Weta Digital to Unity for like over $1 billion. So Peter Jackson's sitting pretty. But we talk about a labor of love to go from World War One doc, which requires heavy image restoration, to a very similar but even more daunting premise, going through all this the Beatles Let It Be sessions, uh, audio and video footage to cull it into a documentary series. He's definitely motivated and dedicated to this right now. It's pretty cool.
yeah, I think it's definitely admirable that he's doing this, and this. I mean, the Beatles Get Back, 3 episode documentary series, ran like about like 7 hours, 7.5 hours,
Yeah, I
something
think
like
it's
that.
closer to 8 hours. It was supposed to be just a film, and then COVID actually allowed him more time in edit, and he realized that he could pitch this as a streaming thing only, and thus really increase the runtime and change, the narrative of the docking. And I think it was a good call ultimately. Normally, you don't exactly advocate for super long things, but given what is being shown and all this archival footage that was being used and then shown to the first time, I think it was definitely the right call. But very interesting.
Yeah, and even the setup of it is interesting, right? So they have all this footage of the Beatles as they recorded their album Let It Be. This was in January of 1969 that they're doing this. And Michael Lindsay Hogg was the director. He's capturing all this for what was supposed to be a Let It Be documentary. I actually never checked in to see if that
Yeah, so that
it did come out,
exists.
yeah.
Yes,
But
and it wasn't very well liked. I think it was much more negative,
mhm.
like a portrayal of the mood of the sessions, and it's actually kind of hard to see. It's not like available to rent or anything as of right now. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and it was something that I mean, as someone that had the Let It Be poster in his room growing up and really liked the Beatles, just never even heard of until this came out. So yeah, I think I agree with you that this was probably buried or just not talked about beyond its initial release much. But they have all this footage. And Jackson worked his way through it, and he really just kind of like shows you what these sessions were like and what the dynamics of the band were for this month period that they're recording before Ringo has to go and star in what was that movie? The Christian
Something like that.
something
Mm,
like that. Some
yeah,
some bad
coming
movie.
up in like early
Uh,
70. Yeah,
but of course, 1969, Beatles are on the verge of breaking up. All the things you hear about. The Paul and John dynamics. Yoko Ono is very present in these sessions, constantly by John's side. Where does George Harrison fit into this duo of songwriters when he himself has all these uh, songs and ideas about music? And of course, I think for a lot of people, Ringo gets this kind of bad rap as like the fourth Beatle, just kind of there. But that's really kind of how he is in this, and it's really just fascinating to have all this footage where you're just with the band talking about these real world things, and it's just really really interesting. I mean, as someone that has seen only one of the Beatles movies that they made, the feature films that they made, to really like sit with the band and like these people just being people, being themselves, goofy, mean, jaded. It was just really a lot to chew on, and I found it just really enthralling. But what was your experience watching? I know you're not probably as big of a Beatles fan as I am, but it's hard to
Yeah.
dislike this, I think.
Oh, totally, totally. No, I was immediately taken with it as well. I think it starts off quite impressively with that opening montage. You see the timeline, however briefly, it's a few minutes of their career to that
Mhm.
point, right? It was really only 10, 11 years, the whole run, but it was obviously so eventful, so impactful, as everyone knows. But I think what's so impressive about the Beatles Get Back, just as a proposition, is that Beatles scholarship, Beatles ephemera has been beaten to death. It's like doing something about World War II academically. Like, it's been done. You don't have a new take. People know all this shit. But
Mhm.
the creation of the Beatles Get Back as a documentary series and the revelations that are publicized by showing all this footage actually is something worthwhile and new to add to that Beatles scholarship, that Beatles canon. And if you're a hardcore fan, I'm not a hardcore Beatles fan. I like the Beatles a lot, but I'm not a huge fan. If you're a hardcore fan, this is like fucking crack to you, right?
Yeah.
You just get to watch John Lennon be John Lennon. To me, that
Hmm.
was almost like a haunting thing in a sense because he's like a fucking ghost to me. To
Hmm.
see John Lennon just being himself, see 25-year-old George Harrison being himself. It's surreal shit. And especially nowadays, right? Celebrities, artists, there's a big thing about having your own production companies, recording yourself, documenting all your things, whether you're an athlete, you're creative, whatever it is, right? But back then, this is a lot less common. And yet the quality of the footage is so good. They had microphones hidden, like they did a great job of really capturing what was going on. And even if it's 8 hours long, sometimes, yeah, you're just kind of watching them jam out and find a melody or something, and it might not even go anywhere. But when you do get moments of brilliance, like John fucking creating the Get Back melody out of
Paul.
thin air, and like, or so Paul creating the Get Back melody out of thin air in 2 minutes, John's not even there.
Hmm.
Like, just pure magic to see something like that, which, from what I understand, wasn't even in the original documentary that came out right after this.
Yeah, well, I think Michael Lindsay Hogg's presence throughout this, he probably is the biggest loser in this because he just
Oh
comes
God.
across so annoying and just like you just want him to get out of every single shot he's in. But yeah, no, I agree, and it's definitely refreshing to see a documentary like this for music because you think about some of the ones we've gotten recently about more current stars, something like Miss Americana from Taylor Swift, which is just like total Taylor Swift propaganda. Basically, it's like
Yeah.
look at Taylor Swift, and these are all the causes she fights for, and this is how she makes these songs. While there's some really cool stuff with of her in the studio, a lot of it just feels so heavy-handed in terms of like
Mm.
this is why you should like her. This, I think, makes you run the gambit of emotions with pretty much every single person in the band. Paul probably is the one that I felt most vindicated watching this because I've always been more of a Paul person than a Lennon person.
Mhm.
Um, but I think he just comes across as like the person who's like, we need to make this work. Like, holy shit, we're the Beatles. We're important. We have to make this work. And everybody else is just kind of like, I'd rather hang out with my girlfriend, or I don't want to be the third wheel in this. Like, I want to
Right.
go write songs about God and spirituality. And like, my songs don't fit in with the sound that you all want. You're being overbearing, and like, you really run the gambit of like liking these people, hating these people who have been so adored for so long. Like you said, everything that there is to be said about the Beatles feels like it had been said, and Peter Jackson still found revelatory stuff, and he kind of flipped the narrative about John and Paul on its head because I thought they came across as quite endearing towards each other. I don't think they were like necessarily warm all the time towards each other, but you can just see that even at this late stage when Paul is openly talking about like, yeah, John's gonna choose Yoko every time. Like this is probably gonna be the end of it. We're gonna break up at some point. Like it's openly discussed. They still have this magic between them and this adoration for each other that was just so special and what made them two of the greatest songwriting people of all time. Just
Yeah.
Just totally blown away by it, dude. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so cool to see is over the course of time, you see why they were friends, why they were brilliant, and why they broke up. It does a great job and an important job to put to rest the talk of, oh, Yoko Ono broke up the Beatles, she stole away John Lennon. It's like, no, that's not what happened. Yes, she was there, all the time, and I gotta say, I give her a lot of credit, just sitting there, no smartphone to dilly dally with, just kind of sitting there chilling for a lot of the sessions. But
Except when she gets on the mic and just screams like a banshee for one part. That was just unbelievable, dude.
yeah, but to see, like, it's because it's so natural, it's so real, because it is real. Why
Mhm.
why they split George feeling underutilized creatively, and going on, of course, very soon after this to release the start of his solo career, which was, started off really hot. um it's just a really impressive thing. And but, like, again, like, even just simply, like, just see the artists being creative naturally, without, like, super, like, not like super edited, like, you see in a lot of these long takes of them just kind of figuring things out, talking about things. It's just really cool to see them work. And yeah, I mean, I was just impressed, just really impressed watching the whole thing. And normally I don't get up for, like, tons of music docs. There's been a lot of them this year, actually, funny enough. Yeah, the Todd Haynes Velvet Underground doc, Sparks Brothers from Edgar Wright, the Summer of Soul, The Ringer, and HBO's Music Box series. There's been a lot of music docs lately. Usually they don't really excite me unless it's a subject that I'm super, super into, or something that has potential to be like the Beatles Get Back, which is just incredibly impressive, and just feels like found money to me. Something like
Mm.
this, right? And I
Yeah,
can't even fathom what it's like to be a Beatles super fan and to see all this stuff again for the
for
first time.
sure.
It's
It
crazy.
yeah, just kind of also blown away just by, I guess, just the odds that while recording this, they just had so much natural drama come up that really made it for a compelling story of just a few weeks that did encapsulate the story of the band so well. It's just really blows me away. The fact that George actually walks out and leaves the sessions for a while. Hearing them talk about people like Billy Preston, talk about people like who actually shows up for a bit, Eric Clapton, and what
Mhm.
he meant to music at that time.
Ray Charles, the Stones, a
Yeah,
little bit.
so fascinating to see all these things brought together. Also, just love the look on Paul's face during the rooftop sessions when the cops show up, just like that like smirk he gets, and he's so excited. Just it's just cool stuff. Real human stuff that you see from these people that seem otherworldly in so many senses. So if you're a fan of music, fan of the Beatles, I mean, even if you don't want to spend the whole 8 hours, I think you can kind of watch the first like two, probably the first episode, maybe even start the second, and really get
Mhm.
a sense of the
Yeah.
doc. So definitely worth checking out. Um, let's move on though, Dave, to again something that I did not make it to, but you did. Come on, come on.
Yeah, Come On, Come On. It's the new Mike Mills film, his first film since 20th Century Women from 2016. However, we did discuss his wife's film Kajillionaire last year. He is, in fact, married to filmmaker Miranda July. But Come On, I think, is notable for a few reasons. Namely, it's Joaquin Phoenix's first acting role since winning Best Actor for Joker. So, and of course, Joaquin Phoenix needs no introduction. You watch him when he does things; he's that good, and he's really great in this film. And it's funny, Come On's just the latest in black and white drama films to come out the end of 2021. We've had so many at this point, with Passing and Belfast and the forthcoming Tragedy of Macbeth. Black and white is back, and uh, Come On. It's just a really personal, kind of simple movie about Joaquin Phoenix's character Johnny taking care of his 9-year-old nephew while his sister goes to tend to her husband, who is dealing with some bipolar issues and can't be there with the family, and Johnny, who has never had a kid, learning a lot about what it's like to raise a kid or take care of a kid in the interim while he's watching this young boy who's played by Woody Norman, the young kid. His sister's played by Gabby Hoffman, who is really great. And most of Gabby Hoffman's scenes are on the phone with Johnny, with Joaquin. But I think the best stuff about it is that the kid, Woody Norman, comes across as like really genuine as a kid who, with his spongy, undeveloped brain, is trying to process what is going on with his parents, why his mom's not taking care of him, why his dad is going away, stuff like that. Trying to process all these things that he just doesn't understand, obviously, right? And then you contrast that with Johnny, who has some of his own things going on in the background you learn about over time. And Johnny trying to figure out how to communicate with someone who's clearly not an adult, right? And meanwhile, the film, we kind of travel LA, New York City, and New Orleans. The New York shots really transformative, looks really great. Spent a lot of time in Chinatown down there. I think thematically, message wise, I think the movie kind of meanders a little bit, but it's really just a movie about people talking. You know, there's no grand conflict. There's no inciting incident per se. So you probably have to really connect with those performances, with those conversations, I think, to get a lot out of the film. On the side, you have Johnny doing his job, which is kind of being like a public radio figure. He goes in person to interview children and ask, like 10, 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, ask them questions about the world. And like the kids talk about their fears of climate change and overpopulation and all kinds of things, really. And I'm not even sure if those scenes were scripted or not, but they're like really, I think, effective like interstitial scenes on the part of Joaquin. Just hearing these young kids is like talk about things, right? But yeah, I think the movie's I don't even want to say it's high minded. It's like it's simple, but it's kind of meandering. So I think you have to really connect with the characters, connect with the loose themes, because the themes are not super defined. And the kid being a 9-year-old character, I think he's 11, the actor, but like the 9-year-old kid, uh, he's a 9-year-old kid, so he might be annoyed at times, but comes across as genuine. So I liked the movie. I didn't love it, but I would definitely say check it out. Mike Mills for 20th Century Women, he got nominated for Best Original Screenplay. He seems to be a really cool indie filmmaker who his ambition is really just to be successful enough to make the next indie film.
Yeah.
And I kind of respect that kind of ambition. So,
Were
Joaquin
you
Phoenix alone worth the price of admission.
I was gonna say, were you impressed with Joaquin? Did you feel like he really like got into this role?
Yeah, and like obviously coming off Joker, it's not as showy as Joker, right?
Sure.
But yeah, Joaquin definitely gets into it. I like it a lot from him. He was tremendous in it, and he's the best part, I think.
Do you get like a father son dynamic between them, or?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because at one point, the kid asks him why he doesn't have any kids and stuff like that, right? And you can sense the paternal instincts coming up at times, but if anything, it's more about like first time parent and all the fears and anxieties that accompany that. And I've seen that sentiment shared by parents watching the film and seeing a lot of familiar conflicts and issues coming up with having a kid, right? So yeah, it's again, because like I don't know if like the journey is super like well defined when you watch the movie. It kind of bobs and weaves through our story, but yeah, I would say check it out. It's an A24 film.
I definitely want to check it out. I've heard good things, so it's on my list, the ever growing list of things I have to get to before our end of year movie list. But one movie I did make it to was The Power of the Dog.
How powerful!
the lead up to this movie, the Jane Campion film dropping on Netflix, was Benedict Cumberbatch giving this performance that probably going to be nominated for Best Actor.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost certainly.
Lock it in.
Yeah. See, it was basically like, let's go see this performance, was kind of how I was going into this movie. And I was more so blown away just by how the movie overall was just like so finely crafted. Like it was the type of movie that like it ended and I just was like, oh, like the movie was not what you think it's about. The whole time you think it's about this thing. Oh, it's gonna be about this. It's a brother versus brother tale. It's a tale about loneliness and the West. It's about a guy who's behind his time and can't fit in with society. It's about him versus the wife. And now it's there's always a story about sexuality and coming to terms with your sexuality and passing that on. And in the end, dude, it's just this fucking sexual revenge story. And bro, I was just like totally blown away by it. What did you think of Power of the Dog?
Yeah, I was very impressed. Liked it a lot for that very reason. You don't know what's happening next in this film. Everything's so intentional that there's all these dead ends that you think about as you're watching the movie for the first time, and you're not really sure where it's going. And it's just really impressive. And Cumberbatch is so strong in the lead, in great part, I think, because he's not the traditional like archetype for Western man. Like if we had Chris Hemsworth in this role, it wouldn't be the same. And obviously, Cumberbatch is a world class actor, but I think like his body type, his traditional roles that we think about directly serve this kind of performance. It's really impressive, and I think all the credit really needs to go to Jane Campion just for crafting this intricate and intentional tale. Obviously, adapted off a book from the 60s, I think it is. This Tom
67
Savage book, yeah. But and I haven't read the book, but begs the question: why Jane Campion hasn't released a movie in since 2009? Because clearly she's as good as ever. She's been widely celebrated for a long time. Obviously, the second woman to be nominated for Best Director, first to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes, won Best Original Screenplay back then too for The Piano back in '93. Celebrated filmmaker, but since 2009, she made Top of the Lake and Top of the Lake China Girl, the Elizabeth Moss series. That's all she did. Like, what the fuck? Again, why is Catherine Bigelow not really doing anything? It's the same problem with female directors in Hollywood, unfortunately.
Yeah. Going back to Power of the Dog, there's this tension that just runs throughout the whole movie. And the tension is ever shifting depending on what two characters are in the frame. Because Benedict Cumberbatch is he's Phil, I believe, right? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He's Phil. And his brother George, played by Jesse Plemons, they obviously are, two people who have grown apart, and Benedict Cumberbatch wants to, still have that relationship that he once had with his brother, whereas George is just kind of like, I don't really want anything to do with this person. He's gruff and hostile and just unpleasant to be around. Finds Kirsten Dunst. They develop this relationship. Obviously Peter, played by Cody Smith McPhee, kind of the I don't know, the person on the side who you're kind of like, what's going on with this character? Like, what's the role going to be for this character in the movie? At first, kind of feels like the whipping boy, and then kind of feels like maybe a person who can enlighten or help Phil come to terms with himself. And you're always kind of like shifting, like, what is this person's role? Because I think the triangle between Phil, Rose, and George is pretty evident. And then as the movie goes on and it starts to shift more and more, and it gets to that the final 30 minutes are just totally riveting. From I'd say probably the moment that um, Peter and Phil ride off together until the movie ends. You're just like, what is this movie? What's going to happen here? What's this going to come to? And the way that the tension evolves from brotherly tension to tension between Phil and the wife to tension between Phil and his parents to is there sexual tension here? The close ups on the rope and him working on the rope and the way he like moves his hands up and down. There's all these aspects that you're just like, what is this? And then once you see the ending, I'm sure if I watched it back, it would probably make a lot more sense and I would pick up
Mhm.
on more things. But it's just so expertly crafted and not heavy handed in any way, and it's beautiful. Dude, I mean, it's like in the Montana hills and just looks
Yeah.
completely. It reminded me a lot of Chloe Zhao's movie last year, just in
Yeah.
terms of the like natural aspect of it. Just really just a masterpiece, I thought. So it's up
New
there for me.
Zealand, yeah, definitely New Zealand, an effective stand-in for Montana.
Who
Looked
knew?
looked incredible. And yes, the vistas definitely bring you back to Nomadland, which did win Best Picture, so we might be in for a visual back to back at the Oscars to be determined there. Yeah, man. Uh, there's just so much good shit there, right? Like I think Cody Smith McPhee is really
Yeah,
impressive. Like his mannerisms, his looks, his stature, all serve a purpose in the film. He's getting a lot of talk for supporting actor uh, buzz, and nice to see, right? Because obviously, I think everyone knew about him from X-Men, where he played Nightcrawler, and he was also one of the Planet of the Apes films, but hasn't done too much since then. And then, kind of out of nowhere, see him in a movie like this. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, this guy's the real deal. And I think partially because, like Jane Campion, he's from Down Under. Makes sense that perhaps he was on this production. But either way, uh, I loved a lot of that red herring with the gloves and the castration scene, which is super visceral, but like setting
that was
you up
brutal.
with Phil and his relationship with wearing gloves.
Hmm.
Uh, in general, the Phil performance, like the menace, the self-loathing that we learn about later on, it's all I think really controlled, right? He's not Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood,
No.
blundering and this force of nature destroying everything in his path. He's not that. He's in the same ballpark, perhaps, but it's not that kind of film. And I mean, once you get the revelations about Bronco Henry, but also then alongside that, Cody Smith McPhee understanding those revelations as well. I mean, I think that scene in the barn is incredible, honestly.
No, totally. And the way that he then uses that knowledge to get close to Phil and like find an opening to bring around the way that
Yeah.
the movie starts, talking about what kind of man would I be if I didn't protect my mother or stand up for
Right.
my mother, whatever that
Yeah.
is. Just so well done. You know, I thought Cumberbatch was obviously phenomenal in this movie. Um, and I think he plays like the character of Phil, who is obviously a very gruff, hostile, just really unpleasant person to be around. But he does it in such a way, especially those scenes where he's trying to reconnect with George or have those moments where like you just really feel for him at times too. You're like, wow, this is a very lonely person
Yeah.
who really just filled with pain and hate. And it like you said, I think uh it's hard to like totally dislike Phil, even though he is such a jackass for most of the movie, because you understand that he's a very lonely, sad person who's projects that pain onto others.
Yeah.
And to have a character like that and build that understanding, I thought was incredibly well done. If anything, I think most thankless role in this thing is Jesse Plemons, who
Mm.
is an amazing actor, but kind of is played very one note. Just George is very like down the middle. He gets some nice moments between him and Kirsten Dunst, who's his actual wife, and I think their on
Right.
screen chemistry is pretty evident. But like where he gets upset and he says like it's just nice to not be alone for once, and you kind of understand his longing and his sadness, and
Right.
so those moments are great.
Yeah, and something like that's paid off with just in the background things where you realize they were living in the same bedroom
Mm-hmm.
before Dunst was in the picture, right? And yet both of them are still lonely. I love the juxtaposition between the ranch and the house, the ranch house. A lot of wealth and opulence and high society culture going on in that house. You learn that, oh yeah, Phil went to Yale. He's just a man of the woods in a sense. Huh. Funny how that worked out. Like there's just I think so many like great red herrings, but it's great touches the way they color things in. And yeah, it's just really impressive. The story, the script, everything's great. Again, I really loved the way they set up Bronco Henry and how you learn more about that towards the end. Obviously they kind of make sure you understand what's going on when Cody Smith McPhee finds the secret uh, sanctuary by the stream later on, in case you weren't picking it up. But yeah, man, I really liked it, and I just the unpredictability, not knowing what to expect going in, and then watching the film and still not knowing where it's going, I think is overall like just an incredible quality.
Absolutely. We haven't even really talked that much about Kirsten Dunst, who I think has been definitely having a bit of a career revitalization.
Yes,
Probably since Fargo, really.
correct.
And you know, I'm trying to think of a role from her where you got to see this much range. This might be the best role she's ever been in. You think about like the scenes of her breaking down to Peter, and like especially that scene where she's totally drunk and crying and kind of going all over the place with him. It's very meaty. Or when she like finds out about the hides not being sold because Phil doesn't want the Native Americans to have them, and how she goes about that scene. I just think this is a great look for her. And could you see her potentially getting a nom as a
I
supporting
could,
actress?
yeah, I could for sure. Um, her and probably Anjanae Ellis from King Richard are the two that most stand out to me in the early going, and I probably Catriona Balfe from Belfast. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's nice. Again, I think I agree about Dunst and this being one of her best roles. I mean, apart from like I don't know, like Marie Antoinette or something, which was so long ago, and nice to see the revitalization and also just meta sense. Cool to see her acting next to Plemons, as you said, her real life partner. Um, yeah, I agree about Plemons as well, but also I just don't mind him just kind of being there, because he is such a high floor as a performer, and I feel like so naturally was a great foil and opposite to Phil, you know, throughout the early
Yeah.
parts of the film. That I think all the casting really worked, and also you get to see Adam Beach for 2 seconds as the Native American, as he's often cast to be. I love him.
Yeah. And you just have Thomason McKenzie, who
Yeah,
we talked about just a few weeks ago, is in Last Night in Soho, uh, just being a maid, a helping hand on the
yeah,
ranch, not
just
really
there.
doing much, just there. So
Playing badminton, or was
yeah,
it tennis or whatever they're doing?
I think they were playing tennis. But shit,
Yeah,
I love when she's like, "That was clearly out." Just like a great line. No, the movie's great. We're gonna be talking about a lot probably in the coming weeks, and with
oh, yeah.
award nominations, everything. Check it out on Netflix. I heard an interesting discussion about if this could, if this was a Best Picture winner, how that would be received, and especially I think the conversation was framed around um, Best Picture being this award that, if it went to a bigger movie, could spark more interest into the awards. If something like West Side Story were to win, or Dune,
Yes.
people would probably be more likely to say, the Academy Awards, they got it right. Something like this feels just so much more likely to me to win. It's like a more artsy film, obviously
Yeah.
a lauded director. Where would you put his chances right now, given what you've seen? Obviously, you've seen more than I have. So,
Yeah, it's a good question. For what it's worth, Netflix did share, and some of the third party sites did share that Power of the Dog was being watched pretty frequently, right? It's not like Mank, where Mank came out last year and didn't really get watched at the scale you'd expect from a Best Picture nominee anyway. It seems like people are watching Power of the Dog, at least a good amount, which is nice to see. But yeah, it's probably going to come down to whether something more crowd pleasing ends up coming to the fore, right? We've talked about King Richard and Belfast perhaps being those films. Didn't exactly set the world on fire at the box office. No adult drama really is doing that apart from House of Gucci. West Side Story is about to come out. Reviews are strong. Perhaps this is a runaway hit into Christmas. There might be a lot of enthusiasm for that. But I think it's right there at the top. I think Campion's kind of clearly the director front runner here.
yeah.
And being she be the first female director to be nominated twice. Crazy that that's even a thing still. That is the truth. So I think the screenplay deserves a lot of look. Production design, obviously directing. Cumberbatch versus Will Smith's going to be a showdown till the end probably. And Smith McPhee and Dunst could get in there too. But Best Picture, I don't think we quite know yet. Because coming into the season, it's like, oh, Belfast, that's the one. King Richard will be there too, and we got to see it, right? But
Yeah.
it's a contender. This is the big Netflix one, right? Netflix is definitely pushing Power of the Dog first and foremost. Passing is not ahead of it in the pecking order, right? So they'll campaign the shit out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at least from what I've seen so far, it seems like it has a good shot. I think Licorice Pizza feels like it could also be in the contention. And if West Side Story is as good as people are saying it is, that feels very Oscar baby. So a lot of factors. So we'll be talking about it all. Real quick on Cody Smith McPhee. He's going to be in the new Elvis movie next year. That's supposed to be coming out next year.
Yeah,
Jimmy Rogers. So he's going to be in some good stuff. I'm happy for him. But we're going to probably wrap up there for this week, Dave. What do we got for next week?
There's a few things. Mainly, as we said, West Side Story coming out, wide release. Steven Spielberg's reimagining the adaptation of the classic. And the reviews are really strong. That's awesome. Succession Season 3 will be wrapping on HBO. Obviously, really excited to talk about that. It's been an amazing season thus far. Can't wait for the finale. And then there's a few other things. Juice WRLD posthumous album. Interesting. The second one. Fortune perhaps does not bode well for that, but we'll listen nonetheless. Aaron Sorkin's new movie, Being the Ricardos, is coming out in some theaters. We might see that. I don't know. We got some stuff. And we'll be talking about our best music of 2021 this week. So look out for that too.
SoundCloud.com/nostalgiapod, YouTube.com/nostalgiapod, @nostalgiapod on Twitter. And lastly, Nostalgia Best of 2021 on Spotify. We'll catch you next week.